that we should say and always compare to. This is a disaster, what's coming into this administration right now. This is the most anti-immigrant, and the anti-immigrant side of this is laced with racism. You know,
Michael, we agree on all that.
Yeah, so I just think that sometimes things have to be taken for what they are in the moment and not just, well, this and 1890 and that. That's true. I'm not arguing with the facts that you're throwing at me. But the point is, what happens now that this man, this disaster of a man, has been elected president?
So what this can do is highlight the racism that's already endemic in our culture. So now we get to fight back against it because there's an ugly face on it. Right now, 40% of the prison population is African American. They make up 13% of the population. We live in a racist country, but it's been underneath the surface, right? Nobody talks about that. Nobody points out that Barack Obama just spent 8 years presiding over a racist criminal justice system. Nobody talks about that. So now we are talking about it. So now everybody's going to be aware of the horrible shit that our government is already doing. Right now, they're letting peaceful protesters get their heads bashed in at the behest of Barack Obama's donors. Right now. So when Trump is the president, more people will be outraged about the crazy shit that our government is doing right now.
Okay, but they will also do worse. I don't know why it's so hard to acknowledge both things.
I acknowledge both things.
Okay, they're going to do worse.
I'm saying, though, that you guys are acting like this is the end of the world. The end of the world has already come for a lot of people. Okay. The end of the world has already been here, and you ignored it. And so now there's an ugly face, and you want him to switch his appointments? I want him to keep his appointments, because now we can fight against it. Now, it was the bus riders that changed things for civil rights. It wasn't a fucking politician.
Yeah, but Jimmy, I say that all the time, but every guy that goes down this dark path costs potentially thousands of lives.
We already did it.
No, but Jimmy, we're going to fight against Trump anyway. We know what Trump stands for. Look, I'm willing to keep an open mind on things we might agree with on TPP, etc. But the weight of the evidence, based on his prior actions and prior statements, is that he's going to do terrible things and we're going to fight against him.
Yes.
I would rather have someone a little less racist, a little less bigoted, a little less prone to disastrous wars in his administration, because I'm going to fight him either way. I'm going to beat him either way. I just don't want as many people killed and destroyed in the meanwhile.
Not to mention what it does if you are watching Jeff Sessions, who is an overt racist, elevated to the job of Attorney General. That sends a bad message in and of itself, forgetting who is president now, tomorrow, yesterday. This man is an overt racist, has been, his policies have been racist, and he's being named to the Attorney General's position.
I agree, and hopefully...
So maybe, it may sound hokey, but to live in a country where this guy doesn't get confirmed, that would be great. Not to confirm him and hate him.
Yeah, because after a while, he just won't. I just think it'll be normal. It'll seem fine. He will have been Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And as much later on, like that stink of the fart when you walk into the room won't smell as bad. But it's still a terrible smell. You'll just grow accustomed to it. So why let someone fart in your room in the first place?
That's right.
Always been my message.
And right now they're already trying to make it normal. My favorite quote was, they said that Jeff Sessions was a world-class legal mind.
Okay, and the world has a lot of shit in it.
Yeah, and then one of his defenders said about the Klan joke, he said that was just hospital room humor.
Yeah, what?
What? Now, before we had locker room humor, now we're in the hospital. Okay, they put us in the hospital, now we're talking about hospital room humor. God knows what other rooms there are going to be and what kind of jokes are going to be in those horrific rooms.
Do you know why he said hospital instead of the alternative? Because when you're talking about the KKK, gallows humor has a completely different connotation.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's why I feel the way I feel today.
Yeah.
That general sadness, doing the research on the appointees, it just makes me sad. Let's move on to another one. Head of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, we can tell you that is happening. Pompeo, who is a Republican representative from Kansas, the graphic we will throw up right now, which also makes me want to throw up. He co-authored the 48-page Benghazi addendum that not even the Trey Gowdy would put his name on. He opposed the Iran deal.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Huge show ahead for you guys. So much that I can't really begin to tease all the different stories in the show today or let you know about them. Obviously, the ban on the 7 countries that coincidentally happen to be Muslim went into effect late Friday. Chaos over the weekend. I will get to all those pictures and videos and all the different protests throughout the country and all the results of it. And it's we're 9 days in. He's already violating federal court orders, and it's already a constitutional crisis. I mean, what do you do with a president who won't follow the law? It never happened in my lifetime. So yes, it's not like we haven't had presidents break the law before. Nixon, George W. Bush with the warrantless wiretapping. You made an argument for Obama on a number of issues, but we've never had a president who said, oh, the courts have decided that what I'm doing is wrong. I don't care what the courts say. I'm not doing it anyway. Well, then you're outside of democracy. So we're going to get to that later in the program. Obviously got an enormous number of stories related to that. But I actually wanted to start the show with some very important news not related to the ban and what's happening in the airports. Actually, there's 3 stories that are very, very important today, not at all related to Trump and his actions. So let me go to the South Dakota story first. So South Dakota, fascinating thing going on there. The voters of South Dakota decided to back this ballot initiative called the Anti-Corruption Act, which was actually wonderful. Let me tell you about it. In fact, this is the USA Today saying it's initiated Measure 22, and it calls for public disclosure of donors who fund advocacy efforts, the creation of a state ethics commission, and public financing of political campaigns. It also limits lobbyist gifts to elected officials and lowers the amount of campaign contributions to candidates, parties, and political action committees. So now, this is great for a number of different reasons. In South Dakota, they actually had a proud history of being against corruption for a long time, asking for transparency in their government. And some of those laws date back to 1908. But recently, it's gone in the other direction, and lobbyists can get gifts to politicians in South Dakota almost in unlimited fashion. So they desperately needed this ballot measure. Now, the Koch brothers hated it. Among the reasons they hate it is because they're giant Republican donors, and they'd like to keep their donors secret. So Koch brothers collect money for the rest of the rich and also put in a giant amount of their own, they're industrialists, and then they give it to Republican politicians throughout the country. Now, they don't want all the people giving them $100,000 at a minimum at a time to be found out. They don't want the people funneling money, legalized bribes to our politicians to get any spotlight at all because they want to be able to do it through dark money. Hey, when I bribe somebody, I don't want you to know I'm bribing them because that looks really, really bad. So the Supreme Court already made that bribery legal, which is insane. But even in that Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, they actually said, Citizens United, they actually said that there should be transparency. We should find out who's giving the money. But Koch brothers don't want that because they're the ones giving the money, especially the guys that they're hiding that are among their donors. So they fought tooth and nail against this. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in a small state like South Dakota, and they lost anyway. They lost 52-48 with all that spending against it. The regular citizens of South Dakota won. And then the legislature in South Dakota decided to do something amazing. They decided, hey, you know what? We don't care about your stinking democracy. In fact, that's what goes back to 1908. The South Dakota was among the first to celebrate direct democracy and say, hey, you the citizens, can have an actual direct vote in what we do. South Dakota should be super proud of that, right? And now what did the legislature do? Nah, I don't like it when you guys do democracy. Ballot measures, no. You're limiting my corruption. No. I'm going to repeal your Anti-Corruption Act, in essence doing a pro-corruption act. Isn't that amazing? So the House voted to repeal the ballot measure. And it wasn't even close, 54-13. Are you kidding me? That's telling all the voters in South Dakota, there is no democracy left in South Dakota. We don't care what you say. We're going to override your vote because we like being corrupt. It's mind-blowing. Look, in all the corruption stories I've covered for you, this is among the most amazing because it's so brazen. And they did it immediately after the ballot measure passed. It turns out, and one of the reasons that I'm updating this story today is it's because they had all these ice cream socials to get to. They had all these goodies from the lobbyists to get to, so they needed to act right away so they could still get their steaks and their oysters and their chili and their ice cream. I'm not kidding. I have the details of that in a second. So that was the House. They voted to repeal 5413. And how did they do it? They actually called, and I'm not kidding, they called a state of emergency. Oh my God, emergency, the ice cream social's in danger. Emergency, they won't let us be corrupt anymore. Part of the reason that they do that is because they had to act right away to still continue to get those lobbyist gifts. The second reason they did it is so that it doesn't automatically come up for another vote next time there's an election as a ballot measure. If you do it as an emergency measure, you got to start from square one, collect signatures again, go through all that expense. So they're like, because they do not want their corruption ended under any circumstance. I've never seen legislators this corrupt, and I've been covering politics for over 20 years. I mean, look, I see legislators taking fur coats from lobbyists, but at least they did it they had the decency to do it in the dark of night and not to just rub your face in it. South Dakota, it isn't America anymore. You don't have a democracy. Emergency. Now, so that's the House. The Senate's going to vote on Wednesday. That's where you come into effect. Look, on February 1st, 2 p.m. Central, at the Senate chambers, State Capitol building, there's an address for you. Go. Show up. Now, look, it's riddled with corrupt politicians. Most of those state senators have already co-sponsored the Pro-Corruption Act, which is the repeal of the Anti-Corruption Act. They're not calling it that, but that's obviously what it is. And it doesn't matter what you think my views on it are. The people of South Dakota have already spoken. They wanted this bill. That's why they passed it. They didn't stutter. But those corrupt senators are going to repeal it anyway. So go there and at a bare minimum, show them that you know what's going on and that you see it and that they're not going to sneak it by you. They think they're so damn clever. Oh, yeah, we'll do pro-corruption and call it an emergency. You'll never find out. No. We found out. We found out. So, look, number one, if you're a South Dakota voter, you have to be livid over this. But the guy who actually proposed the ballot measure in the first place was a former Republican state legislator. Because this isn't about Republicans or Democrats. Are you telling me that if you're a Republican in South Dakota, you love corruption? My guess is if you're a Republican in South Dakota, a voter, not a politician, you hate corruption. You hate crony capitalism. You hate secret dark donors. You don't like it when it's Bloomberg or Soros, and you're not a big fan of it when it's the Koch brothers. Don't let them do this to you if you live in South Dakota. So that one of the guys, one of the groups fighting back and was intimately involved with this is Represent.us. They're nonpartisan. They're against corruption. And so you go there and you can find out more about what's happening on Wednesday and how you can help. On Facebook, if you just go in there and search Rally Against Corruption, you will see on Facebook.com how you can get more information. Use the hashtag #RespectOurVote to communicate about this. Now, that's how you can get involved. Go ahead, get involved. Definitely if you live in South Dakota, and if you want to protest and you actually believe in love democracy, and you're in a neighboring state, go over to South Dakota and help your brothers and sisters in America, okay? Now, let me show you the bad guys. One of them is Matt McCauley. He's a lobbyist in South Dakota, and he's very much against the Anti-Corruption Act because he is one of the corruptors. One of the groups that he works for is, of course, the Koch brothers group. It is ironically, they are so Orwellian. The name of the pro-corruption group is called, quote, Foundation for Government Accountability. If that's not Orwellian, I don't know what is. They literally are the guys arguing for dark money. They don't want the government accountable. They don't want the politicians that they illegally bribed to be accountable. And they named the group Foundation for Government Accountability. Rubbing your face in it. They're probably laughing at you right now. Probably having a good cognac, the Koch brothers are thinking, idiots in South Dakota thought they could have democracy. No, we're going to rip that away from them. Hey, South Dakota, are you real Americans? Are you going to fight? Or are you just going to sit there and let them rob you of your vote right after you made that vote? Now, the other lobbyist group that Macaulay represents is South Dakota Land Title Association. He also lobbies for them, I do declare. And I'm sure that those folks also need a lot of bribes. I mean, crony capitalism, I mean legitimate goodies from legislators. These are the guys who, by the way, complain, oh my God, a poor family actually got a little bit of money so they could eat. Oh, I'm against welfare and food stamps. Now, the Land Title Association would like millions of dollars in goodies from the guys that we just corrupted. Or the Koch brothers, well, they would like even more. You know what they're planning to do? They were going to hold, and they are going to hold, as soon as this is passed and the governor signs it into law, and he plans to sign it into law, you go to his office after the Senate vote as well. They were going to do a legislative appreciation night. Now, is there a lot of regular citizens going around putting together legislative appreciation nights? No, that's what lobbyists do, to show how much they appreciate what the legislators have done for them. But Macaulay's group wasn't the only one. So let me give you all the political events that they were planning immediately. And that's why they're so hurt by this. How could you stop the corruption? We were going to do legislative appreciation night, and we were going to do literally an ice cream social. That's another set of lobbyists planning that in South Dakota. And then another group with a legislative reception. And then a third group with a buffet from South Dakota legislators. So they got buffets. One of these involves steak dinners. Another one has oysters. The other one has chili. So they're giving and giving and giving. So the legislator's like, oh, you're going to cost me a steak dinner and ice cream afterwards. I love the corruption that I was bathing in. Don't let them get away with it, South Dakota. Under no circumstances should you let them get away with it. Now, let me give you more details. After voters passed Initiated Measure 22 in November to make the Anti-Corruption Act law, several lobbyists-hosted events were immediately canceled, including a welcome to a dinner and a mixer and a social. Wow, a dinner, a mixer, and a social. Politicians complained that they would have to pay for their own meals and travel. Politicians complained they would have to pay for their own meals and travel. Well, those are tough times for corrupt politicians in South Dakota. South Dakota legislators have already been treated to more than 50 lobbyist-hosted events in Pierre since January 9th, according to the 2017 legislative social calendar, and at least 60 more are planned before the legislative session ends on March 10th. Gee, I wonder why all those lobbyists are so interested in meeting with their legislators. They probably don't want goodies from them, do they? No, they're just like, oh boy, I've got a lot of principles I want to talk to you about. Now, I'll give you two quick examples. On January 17th, gaming lobbyists hosted legislators and their spouses for a hog roast. Literally, pigs at the trough. Literally. And finally, we go back to the big business groups who have the biggest financial interest in corrupting the politicians. One of those is ALEC. So on the same night, the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, provided a wine and cheese welcome with Swiss steak dinner for legislators that also included their interns and staff, because while we're bribing people, let's not leave out the interns and staff. Well, that's mighty Christian of them. America, and in this case specifically South Dakota, you've got a choice to make. You either bow your head and go, all right, I guess we lost democracy, and we're just going to let our legislators spit in our face, slap us across the face, and go, what are you going to do about that? You're not going to do anything. I'm going to continue to be corrupt. I'm going to take all these dinners, and I'm going to do whatever my private financiers told me to do. They write my checks. Who do you think I work for? You? No, I just spat in your face. Of course I don't work for you. I work for my donors. They just told you that. So your choice is, are you going to let them get away with it? Or are you going to throw every single one of these bums that votes this way out of office in South Dakota and say, we did not stutter, we passed that ballot measure, we passed the Anti-Corruption Act, and you do as you're told because you're not our boss, we're your boss. South Dakota, ball's in your court. Very curious to see what you do. Do you actually believe in America and democracy, or don't you? Okay, I haven't even gotten to Trump and I'm this mad. Okay, let's go to Quebec, unfortunately. Tragedy, well, it's actually not today, it's from earlier. Tragedy strikes in Quebec. Let me tell you about it. It is shooting at a mosque. So let's go to the Associated Press. A shooting at a Quebec City mosque during evening prayers left 6 people dead and 8 others wounded in an attack that Canada's Prime Minister called an act of terrorism. Police arrested 2 suspects. I appreciate that they are finally calling things what they are. Now, again, Canada is different, obviously, than the U.S. The U.S., it will only call an attack a terrorist attack if a Muslim is the perpetrator. Certainly not if they're victims or right-wingers attack Jewish temples or community centers or museums. Those never get called terrorist attacks. You kill police and you're a right-winger and you put the Gadsden flag on them and you say you murdered them because you're against the government. That's not called terrorism. No matter what your political beliefs are, it's never called terrorism in America unless you're Muslim. Okay, in this case, Muslims are attacked and Canada has the decency to at least call it what it is. I thought the right-wingers were in favor of calling things what they are. So this is a terrorist attack. We'll tell you about who did it. We now have a lot more information on who the shooter apparently was. So we'll get to that in a second. More details. More than 50 people were at the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center at the time of Sunday's attack. Some of the wounded were gravely injured. Quebec Provincial Police spokeswoman Christine Colombo said early Monday. The dead ranged in age from the age of 35 to 70, she said. Now, anytime you have these shootings, of course, you find out the stories of the victims and you see some of the pictures from the event, and it's always heartbreaking. And these are from far away, and you get a sense of, obviously police responding right away, trying to protect the citizens of Canada. And then you read the stories about how some of the victims, of course, had kids. One of them works for the Canadian government in IT. 3 kids at home and a wife. And every terrorist attack, I try to explain to you who the victims are, right? And how heartbreaking it is. Now, most of you know that, but when you think about the kids at home, it really brings it closer to something that everybody can identify with, okay? The same and true of the terrorist attacks in Europe that happened. We talked about those poor guys killed and their family members killed right before Christmas in Germany, let alone France, let alone the U.S., now in Canada. Now, a little bit of context for you guys from the Associated Press. Canada is generally very welcoming towards immigrants in all religions, but less so in the French-speaking province of Quebec, which has had a long simmering debate about race and religious accommodation. A few years ago, the people of Quebec debated a charter of values under the previous separatist government, which called for a ban of ostentatious religious symbols such as the hijab in public institutions. And look, I'm deeply secular, but being secular means that you respect other religions. You just don't commingle the state with religion. Because once you start saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to be fundamentalist, and I'm not going to respect your religion because I'm whatever it might be, whether it's atheist, agnostic, or just simply secular. Well, you misunderstood the point of secularism. Because what's the first thing they do? Well, they pick certain religious symbols. In this case, it was the hijab. And it's about one religion in particular. Well, then you're not really secular anymore because you're picking favorites among the religions. And I know their reasoning, oh my God, one religion is worse than others. Do you hear yourself? Now, you could have that point of view, just don't call yourself secular because that's not what you are. You're trying to pick favorites among religions, and that's exactly the opposite of what secular people are supposed to do. Now, me, look, the burqa, I can't stand it. I'm fundamentally opposed to it. But that's my personal opinion. I would not enforce that if I'm in the government because I'm secular. And I wouldn't go talking about your yarmulke or your giant cross that you've got on a chain that you're wearing around because it's not my business. Okay, now again, to be fair to Canada, they've had a great history. In fact, even recently, Justin Trudeau, with this Muslim ban that Trump's talking about, just tweeted, "To those fleeing persecution, terror, and war, Canadians will welcome you. Regardless of your faith, diversity is our strength. Hashtag welcome to Canada." So that's a beautiful sentiment. And so obviously, as we say every time, when a Muslim does it, it doesn't mean that 1.6 million Muslims did it. When a Canadian does it, it doesn't mean all Canadians did it. That's preposterous. Canada has been very welcoming to refugees. They've taken in 39,000, far more, in just Syrian refugees recently, far more than the U.S. has. Okay, now, on the other hand, in Quebec, there have been some disturbing incidents. In the summer of 2016, a pig's head was left on the doorstep of the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center. The incident occurred in the middle of Ramadan when Muslims fast from dawn to sunset. Well, you see, sometimes when they do that, people go, oh yeah, that doesn't really mean anything. Sometimes it does mean something, and they're going to come back and shoot everybody in the mosque and kill 6 of them. So that's what it meant in this particular case. So when people say, oh, you shouldn't be concerned, easy for you to say, you're not the one in jeopardy. So authorities have apparently identified the suspect. They also identified a witness, but they later clarified that the second person was not a suspect, but was simply a witness. The suspect is apparently, and sorry, with all these French names, I'm not going to pronounce them right, Alexandra Bissonnette. So from that picture on Facebook that everybody in the press is using, he appears to be young. And so it is often the young that do this, obviously males. By the way, if you really wanted a profile to stop terrorism, young males would be your #1 category to profile, ban, etc. Now, being a male, I'm not in favor of that. Being rational, I'm not in favor of profiling all young males. But if you want the best indicator of who's going to be a terrorist or going to do some sort of mass shooting, it is young males. Okay, so another case in this situation. But again, has nothing to do with all of the people of Quebec. It has nothing to do with all the young males. It's this one guy who decided to do it. The police in Quebec further clarified. They said following the investigation, the second individual is now considered as a witness. And that was a guy named, I believe, Mohammed Kadir that people were talking about, but it turns out he called it in and was a witness to the attack and was not involved. That is according to the officials in Quebec. And in fact, here, this is their explanation. Newspaper in Quebec, Le Soleil, reports that police now believe a man previously identified as a suspect, Mohammed Kadir, was only a witness and has already been released. So, what is the right strategy to counter terrorism? A smart one that is thoughtful and does not do blanket statements. It's not going to help anybody in Quebec now, let alone the victims, to go on a manhunt for what? Other X, other Y, other Z, other what? People of Quebec? That makes no sense. Other white people? That makes no sense. Other young males, etc. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense when a Muslim does it. It doesn't make sense when a non-Muslim does it. And gee, I wonder if all of the propaganda against Muslims is beginning to have an effect with a Muslim ban in America and this shooting in Canada. And when all the people who say, oh, no, but we just wanted to label Muslims as the other, all we wanted to do was profile them. It's rational to dislike Islam more than the other religions. It's rational to be wary and concerned and suspect about Muslims more than other people. Oh, you're just being irrational by not discriminating against them. No, what you're doing is codifying bigotry that gives, if you will, a safe space for these other people who are already unhinged and who are looking for fame and glory, and that's the last time we'll show his picture in his face, because after the initial report, we don't like to do that, because these guys are all, again, no matter what the religion, background, political affiliation is, they're all looking for glory and fame, and you help them and you enable them when you say, oh, yeah, Muslims are different. They are worse. Hey, I just said profile them. I didn't say ban them. Aren't I being cute and a clever little trick? I just said profile them, and they're so much more dangerous than other people. I didn't say kill them. Oh, did you mistake that for killing them? And if you don't think profiling based on religion makes you a right-winger, well, then you don't understand anything. You have no ability to do, these guys, some of them fancy themselves intellectuals, which is hilarious. No ability to do any kind of logical reasoning. No, what slippery slope? I don't know what you're talking about. Of course, I just said it was the Muslims. It's the Muslims. I was strong and brave enough to label it what it is, okay? And it has everything to do with Islam, you said. And then when demagogues come in and take advantage of that, and we have shootings and we have bans, etc., don't pretend that you weren't involved. Don't pretend that you didn't create an environment where that was encouraged and eventually leads to results like this. And last of all, don't pretend you're a liberal, because you're not. Bigotry isn't a liberal position. Separating people based on their religion, race, ethnicity, nationality, sexual identity is not a liberal position. It's a right-wing position. Please have the decency to at least name yourself. You love talking about naming things. Then name yourself. And don't hide behind liberalism, because what you are is a despicable right-winger. Okay. Now, speaking of despicable right-wingers, I'm not done with this first segment, and we haven't even gotten to Trump yet. Okay. James O'Keefe is the guy who leads Project Veritas. Now, this is a group that does hatchet jobs done it on Acorn, Planned Parenthood, and the list goes on and on. They've been investigated by the authorities. They deceptively edit tapes, and usually the mainstream media goes along. They've gotten a little wiser about it these days. In fact, in some other portions of this tape, O'Keefe actually brags about, we got the media to give us hundreds of millions of dollars in free media, because they put it out there and the media goes, I don't know, I'm going to call it even. I don't know. There's a tape and I'm going to do giant headlines about it. Am I going to verify the tape is real first? No, then I would be a journalist. No, I'm just going to run it. I'm just going to run it. Who cares? And then later, when there's evidence that shows that it was deceptively edited, even including Republican attorney generals and prosecutors in Texas say that the guys who edited the tape against Planned Parenthood, these same guys, should be held to account. Yeah, I'm going to run it as a small little thing. But the big headlines are all going to be about, oh my God, Planned Parenthood, oh, Acorn, and all these things. So this is what they do. And they purposely manipulate the press and brag about it. So there's been some folks who now turn the tables on them, and they are secretly taping Project Veritas gatherings. And there was a story in the Undercurrent recently about an event where they tried to offer money to progressives to cause violence during the inauguration. You can go back and watch our videos on that, and that was amazing, and they caught them on tape, basically trying to goad people to start riots. Unbelievable. Was there giant headlines in the press about that, by the way? Isn't it amazing how the mainstream media plays right into their hands? So when they do it, it's all over the press. When somebody catches them trying to instigate violence during the inauguration and blame it on liberals, a couple of headlines here or there. Where's cable news nonstop talking about it? Okay, so one of the guys who did that was, caught him on tape earlier, was Ryan Clayton. And he went to another gathering that they had in New York where they were all talking in their club. Apparently it's called Friends of Abe, this gathering. And he got the mic. You're going to see the video in a second. And started doing a roast of O'Keefe, and then was physically attacked. He was choked, kicked in the head, thrown down a flight of wooden stairs. I'll show you all that in a sec. And another person who was a progressive activist there is Jason Carter. He was also beaten and kicked. And there's a third witness as well. So first, let me go to the quotes, then the pictures, then the video. So Ryan says, when he was grabbed by the neck, I felt a pop, 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 and then there was nothing left to pop. There was a moment I thought, oh God, this is how I die. Last night was the most terrifying night of my life. Carter, who was in the crowd, was identified as a liberal infiltrator and was attacked. Clayton said that he was dragged through the bar. The crowd cheered his assailants, and O'Keefe called out his name. Now, unfortunately, I'll show the pictures in a second of what Ryan looks like now, but police made no arrests, and a spokesman said the injured men were not assaulted at the location of the O'Keefe party. Well, the pictures and video shows otherwise. The spokesman said the police were called to settle a harassment complaint, not for an assault. Well, how about throwing him down the stairs? Sergeant Lee Jones says, we have no information on somebody being thrown down the stairs. That would be assault. Great. Well, we've got information for you in a second, so I'm looking forward to Sergeant Jones investigating that. And by the way, I suspect that he will. He's a sergeant in that jurisdiction. No reason why he wouldn't. One more quote from Ryan. He said, I feel like I stood face to face with fascism last night in a bar in Manhattan. The brown shirts are here. All right, let me show you pictures of Ryan Clayton after he was hospitalized that night. There he is with a neck brace. Apparently his injuries to his back were even worse than his neck. And there he is being thrown down the stairs and his head stomped on. There he is being dragged out. This is apparently not an assault. According to the O'Keefe organizers of this event, they say this is not an assault. If this is not an assault, I gotta ask, what the hell is it? So now we have the video. This is exclusive to TYT Today. And I'm gonna show you here in the beginning, since Ryan Clayton has taken the mic, you can't see what's happening. And some of those pictures of him being dragged away are taken by someone else's video camera because they had multiple video cameras at the event, giving Project Veritas a taste of their own medicine. But you will see the stairs happening at the end, and you will hear all the audio of what's happening. And Clayton starts with a song, if you will, that's roasting O'Keefe. In the beginning, they don't realize he's doing it, and then they quickly catch on, and then the assault begins. Let's watch.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to take your questions. Any questions you may have?
I got a quick one here. Any fans of Broadway in the house? Oh, sorry about that. Fans of Broadway? Anybody? All right, got a song for James. It's a little bit of a roast. Hope that's okay. James O'Keefe, he's a known liar. It's no secret. Benefits that he takes deceptively. All the girls know about the rape part and the allegations sexually. You can't take my property. You can't take my property.
You can't take mine.
You can't take my property. And you're all on video. Please give me my property back. Please. That's assault. That's what's your name. That's assault. That's assault. That's assault. That's assault. And you're on video. I'm being assaulted! I'm being assaulted! I'm being choked! That is assault and you are on camera! You can't take my property. Listen, you're invited. I'll leave. I'll leave. I'll leave. Please, get off of me. Come on. Get off of me. Get off of me. Let me out of here.
I think his name is Ryan Clayton from the Undercurrent video. I'm really Ryan Clayton.
To detain me unlawfully! Fuck up, buddy. Unlawfully!
Guys, clear the stairs. Get out of here.
That's the same one. Here's another one. There's another one.
Dude, you're dragging him down the stairs. You know that, right? Whoa, whoa. You're on his face, man.
You're on video. Come here. I'm not coming. I'm trying to help you out. Don't kick. Don't kick.
All right. Thanks, guys.
So you saw it with your own eyes there. So I know what some will say, oh, but that wasn't his group and he was infiltrating a group. That's exactly what Project Veritas does. But he was taping them secretly. That's exactly what Project Veritas does. And second of all, there is no editing deceptively. You just saw the video yourselves. That didn't take long. It was about 2 minutes. And in the beginning, you couldn't even see it because his camera was covered. So and we'll see if there are other angles on it. We're perfectly happy to share all angles of the event with you. And if you say, yeah, but he's disruptive. No, that's not what you do. What you do is you call security and you escort him out. That's happened in all gatherings of any political affiliation. What you don't do is grab him by the neck, drag him around, throw him down the stairs, and then near the end, after you realize, oh, I'm on camera because he said I'm on camera, well, let me take my foot off of his head and then just let him go for the rest of the stairs. That is obviously assault. How much of this are we going to countenance? How much are we going to allow before we realize that this is not a good idea? That when you don't apply the law evenly and fairly, you wind up promoting anarchy and chaos. So, New York Police Department, please check out the pictures in the video. See the people who committed the assault. They didn't ask you to come in. They didn't ask you to handle the situation like they should have done, or security at the facility. They took it upon themselves to choke them, beat them, and you see what happened there at the stairs. So I hope the New York police take action on this. If they don't, what's to stop them from doing this to anybody at any time? We'll be right back. So Jodie Foster's directing a movie that's coming out, Money Monster. George Clooney's in it, Julia Roberts in it, Cenk Uyghur's in it. What is this?
You're not really in it. You're not actually playing a role in it. You're just kind of like dicking around, aren't you?
What is this?
Oh.
This is not bullshit. This is not like the last Jodie Foster movie I was in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right, where
Like
I'm
you're in
sitting
the background, like.
I gotta tell you this, is on shoptyt.com, there's a shirt that's relevant to the story where I'm in the background in Contact with Matthew McConaughey's in the foreground, and then it says Thug Life.
Really?
Yes!
I haven't seen that shirt. That's fucking awesome.
No, I'm one of the news guys that's amazed by what's happening. You know, you see that in the movies all the time, but normally they'd go to the CNN or MSNBC host.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll do that in the movie as well, but they're gonna come to TYT. Okay.
That's cool. So
No, that's not cool. That's super cool. We're gonna get drunk and go to that movie. Bart over there with he became like buds immediately at first. And as she's leaving, she's like, see you later, Jodie.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. Are you Bart? Are you gonna see her later? All right, back on the Young Turks. Got a long show for you guys today. Lots of stuff to get to. Real quick, some tweets. Sasha Ray says, we all know what to do after the South Dakota legislators passed a pro-corruption bill. Primaries on every single one went up for re-election. Primaries, general election, anyone who votes for this should be thrown out of office because they don't respect democracy. Cynthia Sorensen says, Xbox Live has been out for 5 days, but that won't stop me from TYT Live. Got tablet and YouTube, yo. Can't stop me from my addiction. Nobody wants to stop. Can't stop, won't stop, Cynthia. Keep going. Grandma Mo says, thank you, TYT Live, for discussing the Trump fan terrorist attack on Quebec mosque. We are grieving for our Muslim brothers and sisters. Suspended account says, will Donald Trump be banning Canadians now? Well, funny enough, as you're about to see, there are now more, well, it didn't happen inside the U.S., but that attacker from Canada that stayed in Canada is more than all the 7 countries banned have produced in terms of fatal attacks in America. So we'll get to that in a second. And the Mad Lib says, we need a shutdown of all young males coming into the country until we can figure out what's going on. Just until we can figure out what's going on. Makes sense. Okay. Kidding. He's kidding. I'm kidding. It does not make sense. All right. Let's give you the main story and the offshoots of it. And then figure out what the hell we're going to do with this Trump guy. All right. So late Friday night, President Trump does another executive order. I thought for a second that conservatives hated executive orders. Credit to Justin Amash, who's a Tea Party Republican who actually did protest Trump's executive order as he did under Obama. Very few principled people left. But most other Republicans celebrate the executive orders of Donald Trump, whereas they claim that they were wildly unconstitutional under President Obama. Now, the reality of the matter is that Trump can do some executive orders around immigration. The question is, what is in the order? What is he doing it based on? And then how do the courts rule on it? And what does he do when the courts say no? Well, in this particular case, he continued to do exactly what he was planning to do, even though 3 different federal courts have told him that this ban, as it pertains to the people that have already arrived, should be stopped and they should be released. Okay, but the guy who ran as a rule of law candidate apparently does not care about the rule of law at all. So first, let's tell you what's in the executive order. Then let's show you the reaction all across the country to that executive order, and then give you the facts surrounding what the reality is. So here's what it does. It bans entry to the U.S. for people born in 7 majority Muslim countries: Syria, Iraq, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, including holders of legal green cards and visas, for 90 days. It suspends the Syrian refugee plan indefinitely. It suspends entire refugee plan for 120 days. It bans entry to the U.S. for dual nationality passport holders, meaning citizens of the above countries who also hold, for example, a British passport, are also banned for 90 days. Let's pause there. The British complained so loudly about that. That is one of the few things that they rolled back. But it is true that, and I don't know if they've rolled it back for France or our other allies, but certainly in the beginning for all of them, it didn't matter. If you were a British citizen, you are not allowed here if you were also a citizen of one of those 7 other countries. And there are many dual citizens in not only Britain, but all across Europe. So I know it's been rolled back for Britain, not sure if it has for the others. So if you're French, Italian, German, it might not matter at all. You might also be blocked. And by the way, even though they rolled it back, they only rolled it back if you're coming from Britain. If you are a British citizen and you have dual citizenship and you are trying to come in from Iraq or Syria for whatever reason, maybe you were a journalist there, or maybe you were part of our intelligence agencies. When I say I mean overall our allies. You were British intelligence. Sorry, if you're coming from Iraq, you're a dual citizen, you're not going to be allowed into the United States of America. It's amazing, from those 7 countries. Now, the most important part in terms of why this is so particularly un-American is it also prioritizes Christian refugees over Muslims. So when now they backpedal a little bit and claim it's not a Muslim ban because they know that is unconstitutional, they say, well, I mean, you know, it's not strictly Muslims, it's just those 7 countries. We didn't ban the others, but we're thinking about it, right? Well, how about the fact that you say that Christians will get priority? That seems like perhaps it has something to do with religion. And they capped the refugee total at $50,000. Obviously draconian. And one more thing from the Mirror Online, it's a fact that is in every publication that's actually decent and smart enough to cover full context. They say that of all the fatal terror attacks carried out on U.S. soil since 9/11, exactly 0 have been committed by immigrants from the 7 majority Muslim countries targeted by the ban. It's almost as if it's not really about terrorism. It's about fear-mongering and demagoguery and attacking one particular religion. Almost. Now, again, as they say today, like, is it Muslim ban? Or would that make it unconstitutional? No, we're not calling it a Muslim ban. Oops, Rudy Giuliani screwed up on Fox News when talking about it because he couldn't help but brag about how Trump had come to him. He apparently didn't come to him for a cabinet position, though. He said, I'll tell you the whole history of it, he said on air. So when Trump first announced it, he said Muslim ban. That's Giuliani talking. He called me up. He said, put a commission together. Show me the right way to do it legally. So the whole point is, I want Muslims banned, which he said many times on the campaign trail. I mean, the famous press conference, total and complete ban. And obviously he tried to find a way to try to make it legal. He did not succeed. He went on to do it anyway. So anyone pretending it's not a Muslim ban is being enormously disingenuous. Okay, now we go to David Chancellor. He's the director of Triangle Center. They analyze attacks like this and had comments on this particular ban. And he said, it is flatly untrue that America is deeply threatened by violent extremism by Muslim Americans. Attacks by Muslims accounted for only 1/3 of 1% of all murders in America last year. So if you're worried about violence in America, there's plenty of murders, plenty of homicides by guns, among other things, terrorist attacks, small proportion, but of all of the attacks and all of the murders, terrorist attacks committed by Muslims is 1/3 of 1% of all the murders in America. Wow, emergency, ban everyone. I've said this many times before. There is one demographic that is actually primarily responsible for the overwhelming majority of the murders in America. And if you actually wanted to do quote unquote logical profiling and pick one group to profile or ban, it would be young males. They commit an enormous percentage, not 1/3 of 1%. Now, I don't want to give you numbers here without having them in front of me, but we've done the stories before. A gigantic percentage of the murders committed in America are committed by young males, and certainly males overall. If you cared about keeping people safe, you would theoretically profile there. By the way, I would be 100% opposed to that, not just because I'm a male, though no longer young. I'm opposed to it because that is un-American. Even if you think, well, that's the group doing it, we don't profile based on that in America because we don't want to discriminate and treat everybody differently. The whole point of America is that we're all equal. Okay, I want you to know that it has actually no logical basis for these bans. According to the State Department, of the nearly 800,000 refugees who have come to the U.S. since 9/11, fewer than 20 have been arrested on terrorism charges. 20 out of 800,000. Now, this is not since 9/11, but I often give this example. I give you dozens of examples, but there was a Syrian refugee who came into the country. He had a kid here, and that kid wound up being Steve Jobs. So when you ban people, you also have the downside of those bans, which is that we no longer have the best and the brightest coming here, the best talent, and then we don't have the great companies, don't have a great economy, etc. There's a downside to these actions. In fact, most Americans realize that. That is why there was protests all across the country. I'm going to give you a small sample of those. Let's go to New Mexico first. These are all largely at the airports to go defend the people coming in. Now let's go to Los Angeles. giant protests at LAX. We try to give credit to the people who shot those by putting their Twitter handles in there. And as I looked at that, I was like, oh, I know Marcy Winograd. All right, let's go to more LAX protests. Now let's go to Miami.
The people united will never be divided. The people united will never be divided. Our people united will never be divided. Our people.
St. Louis.
The St. Louis airport around 2:30. There you go. Rally at the St. Louis International Airport. Cop. Where's Katie? Law enforcement, very peaceful.
Finally, Arizona.
Makes America great. Love, makes America great. Love, not hate. 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 Makes America great.
See, those are real Americans. They understand the point of the country. That's why when it is under attack, and that's what's happening here, the idea of America is under attack, they respond. I asked after the election for people to say, not on our watch, not in a blanket sense, not against Trump before he takes action. And the reason I said that is, okay, look, let's actually give the guy a chance. He won the election. You don't get to win every election. It's not about being a liberal or a conservative, Democrat or Republican. But then he started to appoint his nominees to the cabinet, and you saw what happened there. And then he takes office. And in a whirlwind, in 7 days, he attacks the core ideas of America. That's when you say, not on our watch. So you see all those protests. And by the way, we just gave you a small sampling. There was JFK, there was O'Hare, there was a giant one in San Francisco. Thousands of people, again, showing up to protest. And so what does Trump have to say about all this?
It's not a Muslim ban, but we were totally prepared. It's working out very nicely. You see it at the airports, you see it all over. It's working out very nicely. And we're going to have a very, very strict ban, and we're going to have extreme vetting, which we should have had in this country for many years.
It's working out very nicely? I think we might have different definitions of that phrase. But maybe they think it is working great. I mean, they wanted demagoguery, and demagoguery they got. They wanted attention on their hate-filled rhetoric because they think it's populist and works. Well, they got attention on it. So now, of course, it has real-life ramifications, and so they asked Sean Spicer about it, and in particular about a 5-year-old boy who was detained. Let's first look at his callous response.
Look at how it worked. When you talk about the 325,000 people, 109 were temporarily inconvenienced for the safety of us all.
The 5-year-old from Iran for 5 hours.
And they were processed through, Kristen. That's the process. I get the point is that you can go through and nitpick and say, okay, well, this individual is, but that's why we slow it down a little. And to make sure that if they are a 5-year-old, that maybe they're with their parents and they don't pose a threat. But to assume that just because of someone's age or gender or whatever, that they don't pose a threat would be misguided and wrong.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I mean, if only we had video of the 5-year-old and you could judge for yourself whether he poses a threat, because you can't assume that a 5-year-old, I mean, he's from Iran. You can't assume that he doesn't pose a threat. Well, it turns out after being detained, this very potentially dangerous Iranian 5-year-old was released to his mom. We have that on local news. Let's watch.
This Iranian mother's 5-year-old son that you see on the left-hand side, she anxiously awaiting his arrival at Washington's Dulles International Airport Saturday night, only to learn that he was one of the travelers detained. And there you see the reunion after hours spent without answers. She finally got to hold on to her son in her arms right there. Here's part of the emotional moment when they reunited.
So that's what we're protecting the country from. Obviously, CNN covering that. So now, one of the other people banned, in fact, one of the first people who was detained and then released, was a guy who happened to work for us for 10 years in Iraq, endangering his life. His name is Hamid Jalid Darwish, and there's a tweet of him being greeted at the airport when he was finally released. He has nothing but great things to say about America, loves America, but they weren't checking for whether you're a real American. They were checking to see if you're a Muslim from one of the 7 countries that have now been put on the banned list. And so the fact that he risked his life for us was immaterial, and he was questioned because of his nationality originally and his religion, of course, because if he was a Christian, they would get priorities. This is not what America's about. And finally, I want to leave you with a little bit of hope, and of course, all those protests are enormously hopeful. But on that weekend when all this started breaking down, we also got this note, and Huffington Post relays it. Tonight, the day after the anniversary of the Holocaust Remembrance Day, hundreds of New Yorkers, this is the New York Civil Liberties Union that put this out, hundreds of New Yorkers will join Jewish community leaders, civil rights and civil liberties organizations, immigrants' rights organizations, and local elected officials to condemn President Trump's executive order suspending the U.S. refugee program and the entry into the U.S. of nationals from 7 Muslim-majority countries, and to affirm solidarity with refugees and immigrants who seek safety and opportunity in this country. So, yes, with Trump, we have seen the worst of America. But in reaction to Trump, we have seen the best of America. So whether it's the New York Civil Liberties Unions or other religious organizations that are banding together and saying, not on our watch, or simply average Americans going out to do the most American thing you could do, protest. And so if you're going to commit acts that are un-American at the airport, we'll see you at the airport. If you're going to do it in the streets, we'll see you in the streets. If you're going to do it in government buildings, we'll see you in government buildings. This is the resistance, as it should be, the most American thing you can do. And you need to do it often, because apparently this guy is going to flout the laws, flout our traditions, and flout the Constitution over and over again. 3 different courts told him that he must release the people who were detained at the airports. He refused to do it. He does not care about the Constitution or the rule of law. We've got to make him care. And it begins with protests. So I'm both deeply discouraged by his actions and deeply encouraged by your reaction. Let's keep it going. Okay, now let me turn to the law, as I was telling you. So Donald Trump does his ban. He wanted it to be a Muslim ban. He asked about how he could do it legally. Well, is that mighty Christian of him? Decided not to do it legally anyway. Now, how do I know that? Well, they spring this executive order on the Department of Homeland Security and other groups that have to enforce it. In fact, we know now that some of them, including the head of the Department of Homeland Security, found out about it as it was being relayed on television. So the Trump administration's got them on the phone, and they see on TV that the ban has already begun. So not a lot of great planning, and of course, it created many different issues. And there was a number of courts that said that they could not do this. Let me summarize that for you guys. On Saturday night, a judge in Brooklyn ordered the Trump administration to stop deporting refugees and visitors immigration authorities had previously cleared to enter the country. 2 judges in Massachusetts ordered that travelers who were legally authorized to be in the United States shouldn't be detained or deported from Logan International Airport for a period of 7 days. A judge in Seattle halted the deportation of 2 travelers, and a judge in Virginia issued an order requiring the administration to allow lawyers access to lawful permanent residents, also known as green card holders, whom Customs and Border Protection agents had detained at Dulles International Airport on Trump's instructions. So, people come here legally. Trump puts out an executive order saying detain them. These 4 courts say, no, you are not allowed to detain these people, and you're certainly not allowed to deport them back to the country that they came from, which was their original intent. So now, more reasons as to why this happened. When you go to the federal court in New York, there's a reporter who tweeted in. They explain that it's Jackie Vemo explaining there are 4 factors that have been met according to the court: irreparable harm established, the likelihood of success on the merits, no harm to the government, and likelihood of class certification. So what that means is the courts have deduced in this early round, when they have to act right away, that the people who are saying that they should not be detained are likely to succeed at the end of the entire court proceedings. And there's almost no harm to the government in not detaining them, and so that because they've already been legally cleared. So you are not to hold them. Now that is enormously clear. It's one thing to do the executive order, which Republicans told me were unconstitutional. Now, we didn't say that. It depends on how you do the executive orders and what the topic is, etc. But Republicans hated executive orders and they thought they were unconstitutional. Okay, but I'm not even talking about that in this case. What I'm talking about is a federal court tells you you are not allowed to do that. Now, do you respect the rule of law, or don't you respect it? Well, let's find out. As Huffington Post explains here, just to be absolutely clear, when federal judges rule, government officials, up to and including the president, are supposed to obey or risk being held in contempt of court. A government that ignored the courts would be able to violate the law and the Constitution at will. So for more than 2 centuries, the nation's courts have had the last word on what's legal and constitutional and what is not. Now, you all know this. If you took high school civics, you know this. If you had one law class at any point in your life, Marbury v. Madison, and the list goes on. This is the most clear thing in America. Checks and balances. Supreme Court and the federal courts overall get to decide what is legal and what is constitutional. Not according to the White House. Senior White House official says, Saturday's ruling does not undercut the president's executive order. All stop visas will remain stopped. All halted admissions will remain halted. All restricted travel will remain prohibited. Well, now what are we going to do? We have a president who says, I won't follow the law. I don't care. I'm already sitting in the seat. And what are you going to do about it? Now, for all the people that before he got in saying impeach, look, you lost an election. You can't just impeach the guy because you don't like him, okay? Now, he turns around, though, with lightning speed. I have to be honest. I thought it'd take much longer. I thought they'd warm up to breaking the law. No. I thought it'd take at least 6 months for them to begin to go in this direction. No, within 6 days, they do these executive orders. The court says you can't do it, and they say, what court? What do you think, we live in America? I don't care what the courts say. I'm the executive branch. I'm the one with the guns. I'm big government, and I'll do anything I like. Representative Don Bayer was amazed by this, as many others are. There's just one representative. He wrote, we have a constitutional crisis today. 4 members asked CPB officials to enforce a federal court order and were turned away. Now, they asked the Customs Border Protection officials, who he's referring to, the court says you must release those detainees you're holding now, and we know you're holding. Here's what one official told them from Customs and Border Protection. It's not going to happen. Court orders be damned, they don't apply in America anymore. It's not going to happen. When they asked a White House official, what are you guys doing here? Look at all these protests, and more importantly, the court order is telling you not to do this and you're violating them. The White House official said, no, we think this has been, quote, a massive success story. But maybe to them it is success. Demagoguery, a country divided, hate instead of love. They're like, what are you talking about? Mission accomplished. Discriminating based on religion, that's what we told you we were going to do. So now, it's one thing to say you're going to do it. It's another thing to break laws and to not listen to the court system. They think that this is a brilliant strategy. It seems like Steve Bannon, the demagogue-in-chief, is the one that's pushing this forward without even consulting with other branches of Trump's government, including the Department of Homeland Security. They think that this kind of racist, xenophobic bigotry is the populism that got them the election. Maybe that got you half your voters. The other half of the voters that voted for you held their nose and voted for you because they didn't like the establishment. But it's not that they don't like America and our system of government. They do like that. They love America. So when you say you're not going to listen to court orders, my guess is those guys are going to be pissed. They're going to say, this is not what I voted for. I want to change. I wanted jobs. I'm sick of my wages being depressed year after year, decade after decade. You promised me jobs, and this is what you give us? Abner Green, former Fordham University law professor, says, obedience to specific court orders is what keeps us from being a banana republic or a fascist dictatorship. That's a really big deal. They look at that inside the Trump administration and think, massive success story. Well, I wonder what they think success is. Look, guys, at this point, we're left choiceless but to talk about what legal action can be taken. And there really isn't any other legal action to be taken against the president who won't follow the law other than impeachment. This is not for political reasons, and if it was, I would be totally against it. You don't get to redo elections. It's just because the guy you don't like won, and we had Bush for 8 years. But if you break the law and you refuse to comply with court orders, what choice do we have? So it begins. All right, one more story for you in this segment. Now, a curious thing about Donald Trump's Muslim ban, of course, it doesn't apply to all Muslim countries. He says these are particularly dangerous Muslim countries. And that's weird. The 7 countries that are on the ban list have led to 0 fatal attacks inside the United States in the last 40 years. But wait a minute, it was Muslims who did 9/11. That was certainly within the last 40 years. Very true. In fact, 15 out of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. But the Saudis were not on the list. They were not banned. Let's try to find out why. Let's go to the New York Times here. President Trump omitted from his ban a number of other predominantly Muslim nations where his company has done business. Oh. The 7 countries whose citizens are subject to the ban are relatively poor. Some, such as Syria, are torn by civil war. Others are only now emerging from the war. One thing these countries have in common is that they are places where Trump organization does little to no business. Now, okay, those are the countries that he doesn't have any business interests in, but maybe he's just as tough on countries that he does have business interests in, so let's be fair, let's find out. By contrast, other neighboring Muslim countries are not on the list, even though some of their citizens pose just as great a risk, if not greater, of exporting terrorism to the United States. Among them are Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt. A vast majority of people living in these countries, like the people living in the 7 subject to the immigration ban, are peaceful and law-abiding. But these 3 countries have exported terror to the United States in the past. They accounted for 18 of the 19 terrorists who perpetrated the September 11th attack on American soil, an attack which was directed by another Saudi, Osama bin Laden, with the assistance of an Egyptian, Ayman al-Zawahiri. Now, so why not include them? I mean, even for the bigots who like what Donald Trump doing, yeah, ban the Muslims, people who did vote for him because of that, why not ban the other Muslim countries? Well, especially if they're the ones who sent the people who attacked us. Let's try to find out the answer to that as well. New York Times continues, these countries, unlike those subjected to the ban, are ones that Donald Trump has done business. Oh. In Saudi Arabia, his most recent government financial disclosure revealed several limited liability Trump corporations. In Egypt, he had 2 Trump companies registered. In the United Arab Emirates, he had licensed his name to a Dubai golf resort and a luxury residential development and spa. They go on to explain that he's also got business interests in countries that have huge Muslim populations as well. India is not predominantly Muslim, but it has one of the largest Muslim populations in the whole world. They are not subject to the ban. Also, large Trump organization companies and ties to India, of course, they're not banned. Turkey is 99% Muslim. Now, to be fair, they're also a NATO ally, but also have Trump businesses, hence not banned. Now, again, like the New York Times, I don't believe any of these countries should be banned. It's crazy. But are you beginning to see a pattern as to who gets banned and who doesn't? And it really doesn't have anything to do with the people that actually did the terrorism on American soil. Nothing to do with it. New York Times then adds their opinion. They say our government should instead screen all immigrants for potential links to crime or terrorism, as it has long done. Saying you don't do a blanket ban on countries or religions, and in this case, yes, Christians have priorities, so they are Muslim majority countries, and the ban is specifically about Muslims. They are deprioritized, Christians are prioritized. Yes, that has everything to do with religion. What the New York Times is saying is what any sensible person would say, which is that, hey, we need to vet people that are coming into this country. We all agree to that. We have to be very careful about it. In fact, we have one of the longest vetting processes in the entire world. It takes 18 to 24 months for you to be able to get any kind of legal status in this country and to be able to come in. But now they're saying, I don't care, even if you've gone through that, you're still not going to get in if you're from these 7 countries and you're Muslim. New York Times concludes discrimination based on national origin is thinly veiled attempt to discriminate on the basis of religion. And indeed, President Trump has admitted that he wants to prioritize the settling of Christian refugees. So if you're Christian, you move to the head of the line. If you're Muslim, you move to the back of the line. Where have we seen this before? Beginning to discriminate based on religion is a disastrous idea, not just in recent history in Europe. But remember, the reason why a lot of our ancestors came to America in the first place was to flee religious persecution, going all the way back to the Puritans. That was part of the reason this country was formed in the first place, is to make sure we don't have religious persecution. But here we are again. And now we've decided who the new other is and who the new enemy is. In this case, it's Muslims, but particularly poor Muslims and ones that don't have contracts with the Trump organization. Okay, I'm not even done yet. I got to take a break here. I do have 2 more very important stories from today for you guys. And then we've got other important stories, including Standing Rock, in what is theoretically our second hour. Long, long show today. Come right back. All right, back on the Young Turks, breaking news, JR just handed to me. Acting Attorney General Sally Q. Yates, who is a holdover from the Obama administration, has ordered the Justice Department not to defend the refugee ban. Basically saying, literally, not on my watch. So they will not be defending the refugee ban for now. Obviously, Trump will have his people come in soon. So let me go to tweets real quick. You guys mentioned that a little bit, and then two more important stories related to the ban. Kirby C. Wang writes in, the executive orders are nonstop because Trump does not know how to get things done through different channels. That is partly true, as I'm about to tell you in these stories that are upcoming, but partly because they want chaos and disorder. And I'll tell you why. So Namretic says, I love how there's always some guy with a snare drum that shows up to protests. That's funny. The Laughing Man says, Prophet Cenk got it right again, said there would be a constitutional crisis, just was off on the timeline. My timelines are always sketchy, and it's a bit much with Prophet Cenk, but thank you. The Mighty Milk Me, a bit much. The Mighty Milk Me says, looks like more protesters in airports than people attending the inauguration. What's the Grand Cheeto going to think? And finally, Chelsea Charles says, more vetting required to come into this country than there is to be the leader of it. Shame. Shame indeed. Now, let me go to those stories that I mentioned. Now, one of the things that I warned you about in regards to Donald Trump is his incompetence. Now, of course, we know about the bigotry, and voila, within a week, we've got bigotry. The Muslim ban, and it is a Muslim ban, because not just because it hits Muslim majority countries, but because Christians have priority in being admitted in. They are very literally discriminating based on religion. So that we knew, but I think what the country didn't appreciate enough, and I think his opponent in the race did not focus enough on, is his sheer incompetence. Now, if you read any of Donald Trump's history, you would know that it's littered with bankruptcies and financial collapse after financial collapse. He mainly gets bailed out by his dad, who left him $200 million, and on top of that would bail him out of his bankruptcies over and over again. So I was very worried the kind of damage that he would do inside the administration, obviously, when he becomes president. Well, that has begun. So this Muslim ban that they instituted, it turns out, oops, they didn't really check with anyone. Now, that's partly oops, partly on purpose. I'll tell you why on purpose in a second. But legal experts at state, nope. Department of Justice, nope, didn't check with them either. Department of Homeland Security, they're the ones that are going to implement it. Did you tell them? Not until it had already started. They didn't check with any of these people. Okay, so Ari Melber reporting here, Trump White House shielded ban order from formal review by National Security Council lawyers or by any agency, including the Department of Defense. Now, that's what sources inside the administration were telling NBC News. Amazing. Okay, now we go to John Harwood. He says, senior Department of Homeland Security official tells NBC News that career professionals at state and Department of Homeland Security had no input on directives, now scrambling to interpret and implement. He continues, senior justice officials tell NBC News the department had no input, not sure who in the White House is writing/reviewing, standard National Security Council process not functioning. Lawyers, why do we need any stinking lawyers? We're not planning to abide by the law anyway. If I had to check with lawyers, they tell me not to do it because it's illegal. That's why I didn't check with the lawyers. It's both incompetence and on purpose to make sure that they didn't get stopped by reasonable people who would tell them, Mr. President, you can't do that. They act before they are denied and told that it is illegal. Amazing. Josh Gerstein writes in, minor example of weak vetting of Trump executive orders. Anti-terror one cites a wrong provision of federal immigration law 8 U.S.C. 1222. Means 1202. Whatever. So, partly on purpose to avoid legal scrutiny, but partly out of sheer incompetence. Now, if you don't ask the lawyers, sometimes you screw up the legal stuff. So the executive order is wrong on its face. It cited the wrong law. Oops. But again, with Trump, he doesn't care what the law is. So it's like, what difference does this make what law we cite when we're above the law? He's got 4 court orders telling him not to detain people at the airport and release the people that have been detained and not to deport them. And he's saying, I don't care. I'm going to detain them anyway, and I'm going to deport them anyway. So I got the wrong law. It doesn't matter. Even if I had the right law, I wasn't going to abide by it anyway. What are we going to do with a guy like this? A president that within a week is this flagrant in violating the law and violating any kind of reasonable protocol so that we can make wise decisions at the White House. How long can we last? And by the way, if you say yes within a week and you start saying, well, on the other hand, in 50-50, maybe the president should be allowed to break the law. Maybe the president shouldn't check with lawyers. Maybe the president shouldn't check with his own Department of Defense before he takes action, or the people who are going to implement it. Well, what won't you let him get away with next week and the week after and the year after? Okay, now let's go to the people that are part of his own administration. Two sources with the State Department told the New York Times in a Saturday report that leaders with Customs and Border Protection and Citizenship and Immigration Services were getting briefed on the order right as the president signed it. So he didn't bother checking with them. Hey, can you implement this? How would you implement this? He didn't even tell them until they saw it on TV. Amazing. In fact, they literally saw it on TV as the White House was calling. Jonathan Adler, I disagree with him with some portions of his legal opinion on what the president can and can't do with executive orders, but he makes an interesting point at the end. He says issuing orders that can upend people's lives without conducting the most basic review is practically the definition of arbitrary and capricious government action. Now, that is important because that is a legal standard that the courts use. If the government action was arbitrary and capricious, it is not likely to stand. But what Adler doesn't understand is they don't give a damn what the courts say or if the courts rule against them. They're just going to say, that's like your opinion, man. I'm the executive branch. I'm the one with all the guns. What are we going to do with this guy? Now, a White House official says about the Department of Homeland Security, they were gathered together, and the head of the Department of Homeland Security is on a call with the White House when they see on TV that the order has already been signed, and they have no idea how to implement it, and they're talking about how the department has to implement it. And a White House official said about that moment, the president is signing the executive order that we're discussing on the phone. Amazing. No preparation at all. Gee, I wonder why he went bankrupt so many times. Okay, and now how about the defense secretary, Mad Dog Mattis? Well, Mattis reportedly did not see the order's final draft until hours before Trump signed it, in front of him at his ceremonial swearing in at the Pentagon. Mattis was a vocal critic of what Trump had called Muslim ban during the presidential campaign. Now, if Mattis is against it, you don't tell Mattis. If the lawyers would tell you it's illegal, you don't tell the lawyers. That's how Trump is operating. This is super dangerous, and I don't know how this ends and when it ends, because it's already within a week spinning out of control. Meanwhile, we'll go back to Trump. When asked about how the ban was going, he said, quote, "It's working out very nicely." He said, "You see it at the airports. You see it all over." Well, you do. It's not my definition of working out nicely, but apparently this is the kind of chaos that they were looking forward to. Okay, now finally, let's go to the guy who might be behind all of this. Now, Steve Bannon is a demagogue extraordinaire, and he was the person who was running Breitbart, basically a trash publication online, and proudly the home of the alt-right, who are generally white nationalists. Some of them are now claiming, now look, we're all extreme right-wingers, but some of us don't hate everybody. Some of us just hate specific religions. Others hate everybody who isn't Christian. So there's a wide range. Don't say we're all white nationalists. That hurts our feelings. Okay, this is the guy who ran that website, then was the chief strategist for Trump during the campaign. Gee, I wonder why he talked about bigotry all the time and the Muslim ban, which they wound up doing. Now he's the chief strategist inside the White House, but that wasn't enough. He's got to be closer to power. And remember, Trump is very, very unintelligent. And that is why a lot of the insiders tell you, and they're not against Trump, they just tell you how he operates. They say, look, the guy who's in the room with him last wins. So he's got ADD, he can barely pay attention. So a lot of ideas will be discussed. He'll be, twiddling and, well, actually literally tweeting. And then if Bannon's in the room last and he's like, okay, now we're doing the Muslim ban. He's like, okay, what executive order do I sign, Steve? So what's going on with Steve Bannon? Let's check in at Mediaite here. Trump enacted a new executive order on Saturday, which placed White House chief strategist and former Breitbart editor Steve Bannon on the National Security Council. He has no experience in national security. He ran a media magazine. I don't say that derisively. God bless new media. But National Security Council? Really? It's because Steve Bannon told him to do it. He's like, oh, you don't need any experience? Okay, sure, I'll sign that executive order. Hey, but President Trump, didn't you criticize Obama for all the executive orders he signed? Whatever, Steve, what do I do? There's not much in that empty little orange head of his. So, there's more. If you're a guy who's looking to grab a lot of power inside the White House, and you've got a president with not too many thoughts in his head, you want him listening to you, you want to be closer to power, you want to be on the council, but you also want to lessen the power of the others. So here comes the second part. The action also states that the Director of National Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff will now only attend meetings where, quote, issues pertaining to their responsibilities and expertise are to be discussed. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is the guy in charge of all of the armed forces. The heads of the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force report into him. So if you're discussing matters that they would normally attend in a meeting, now some of those meetings are going to be ruled out for them. No, you're not to attend those small council meetings anymore. Well, who gets to make that decision? You guessed it, Steve Bannon. Now, if somebody did this here, I would see it from a mile away. I'd be like, oh, really? You would like me to only listen to you, but not anyone else? Boy, that is really clever. Now, for people of reasonable intelligence, it's very transparent. Again, Trump speaks at a third grade vocabulary. It's not an accident, and it's certainly not some sort of brilliant strategy, because that's about the level of his intellect. So Susan Rice, who was the national security advisor for Obama, can't believe her eyes. So she writes online, this is stone cold crazy. After a week of crazy, who needs military advice or intelligence to make policy on ISIL, Syria, Afghanistan, and North Korea? I mean, previously unimaginable. Like, I don't need my National Security Council, unless Steve Bannon is running it. I don't need my Department of Defense, etc. Mental. Okay, Susan Rice continues. Pence may chair National Security Council meetings in lieu of POTUS. Never happened under Obama. UN ambassadors sidelined from the cabinet and sub-cabinet level meetings. Ambassadors, you are now sidelined. And I told you, Trump doesn't even want to be president. He just wants to be famous. So he's like, who can I hand off this responsibility to? I don't like responsibility. Okay, Steve, you run everything. Oh, National Security Council meeting. Do I have to go, Daddy? No, that's okay. Mike Pence will sit in for you and actually be president for a while. And he doesn't even mind. One more from Rice. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Director of National Intelligence treated as afterthoughts in cabinet-level principals meetings. And where's the CIA? Cut out of everything. Wait, I thought I saw Trump at the CIA telling them that nobody respects them more than Trump. Unless, of course, they're making decisions, in which case you've been sidelined. Now, Raw Story has some more details on this. Steve Bannon, senior advisor to President Donald Trump, personally overruled a decision by the Department of Homeland Security not to include green card holders in the president's temporary ban on travel from Muslim countries. Now, that has since been overturned. But when they were making the decision in the beginning, the Department of Homeland Security says, no, green card holders have almost all of the rights of citizens. We're not talking about vetting anymore. They already live in this country. They have legal rights. These are permanent residents. And Bannon's like, I don't care. Are they Muslim? Then I'm banning them. And I'm now sitting on the National Security Council. I can do whatever I want. Amazing. Okay. Documents obtained by CNN showed that the Department of Homeland Security initially determined that, quote, lawful permanent residents are not included and may continue to travel to the U.S. But Bannon personally intervened to counter the guidance from Department of Homeland Security lawyers. You don't need lawyers if you're planning on breaking the law. In fact, they're kind of annoying. Now, finally, from CNN, the White House overruled that guidance overnight, according to officials familiar with the rollout. That order came from the president's inner circle, led by Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon. And their decision held that on a case-by-case basis, Department of Homeland Security could allow green card holders to enter the U.S. So, in other words, in the beginning, they wanted to even ban permanent residents. Finally, after enormous blowback on that provision in particular, they have apparently reversed it. But since they're not keen on following the law, you never know when they might bring that part of the ban back as well. And we certainly know which way Steve Bannon is heading. Now, when they asked Sean Spicer at the press briefing at the White House about whether all these things are true, that some of these players have been, their roles have been diminished, some have been sidelined, and that Steve Bannon is actually on the National Security Council, which seems unbelievable. And he said, no, don't worry. It's, quote, utter nonsense. Oh, well, that sounds reassuring, and that's the White House press secretary. Later, when pressed on details of what he means by that, he said, well, Steve's not going to be in every meeting. Oh, are they not merciful? Steve Bannon will not run the entire country. He won't be at every meeting. But yes, in other words, he is now on the National Security Council with no qualifications whatsoever. And so all that talk about, oh, it's overblown, not true. He is in that seat of power. And it's not an accident that you're seeing the outrageous and extreme actions that you're seeing from the president in the first week, because he's listening to the guys like Steve Bannon. I was going to say it's going to be a long, long 4 years, but I'm not sure he's going to make it that far. Young Turks. Here's how we prove we're too strong. We're up for a shorty again. Let's crush the competition. We're actually up for 2 awards. Best News and Media, of course, and Best Overall YouTube Presence. Ooh, I'll sink your lawn. PewDiePie, we're coming for you. Okay, I don't know if he's nominated. Anyway, let's go win it. It'll annoy our competition. Those guys go, oh, yeah, no, but we're bigger or something. I mean, we don't have the numbers, but we can maybe. Well, how come we win the shorties, the streamies, and the webbies every year? By the way, it's not because of us, it's because of you guys. You're too strong. Let's go crush them. How you vote, you go into the description box below. You've got all the links there. We also made it tinyurl.com/TYTShorty2017. You could bother typing that in if you don't want to go to the links below and just click it. And you know what? You can vote every single day. So you can't vote more than twice a day. I don't want any voter fraud, okay? But you can vote every day. Let's go win those 2 shorties. Best Overall YouTube Presence. Washington. Go.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Money from the Chinese and they give it to us because they're nice people. We're a bunch of capitalists borrowing money from a bunch of communists so we can bring democracy to a bunch of Muslims who don't even fucking want it. I saw a comedian on the TV, he said, if you're 30, 35, 40 and you still work at a fast food restaurant, you're a loser. I was like, oh, thank God. Somebody finally stood up to the minimum wage worker and took them down a few pegs. That's the beauty of Facebook. Right, you find out that you really don't like
your friends. Because I think a lot of the gay guys themselves voted against gay marriage. I'd love to marry you. I can't wait. Let me go vote. No. And then afterwards, you act upset about it. Oh, I wanted to marry you, but they made it illegal.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Members of the day are Asia Davis and Robert Sophie. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member and power this show. We are still raising money for journalists. That's tytnetwork.com/go. Let me read a couple of tweets for you guys. Laura Galazunas says Bannon on the National Security Council is scary, especially since they kicked the ones with experience out. Very true. Miranda Warren says Trump doesn't seem to understand the CIA. They're very good at overthrowing governments. Probably shouldn't piss them off. Miranda, that was kind of back in the day, right? Which is a good thing that it was back in the day. I don't think they're going to do anything to Trump. Ishka Bebel says, man, this is scary. We are so going to get attacked bigly. And so that's the other thing that I wanted to just focus on for one more second, because I think that's such a good point. So this doesn't make us safer, it makes us less safe. There's a dissenting memo sent by State Department officials today saying this is counterproductive and likely to make us less safe. And by the way, to be fair, it's a story I didn't get to. Some of the Republicans were cowards, like Paul Ryan, and backed this after being originally opposed to it. But a lot of them did stand up. So John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Ben Sass, but I like to call him classy Ben Sassy from Nebraska, and others. Mitch McConnell was a mixed bag, as usual.
Sass is such a great last name.
I know, right?
I'm a little jealous.
I know. A Republican senator from Nebraska is not the one I imagined with a colorful name. Anyway, so some of them did stand up. We'll see how long they stand up for what winds up happening. But if we get attacked, and they all said it was counterproductive, right? Making it more likely that we'll get attacked. If we get attacked, hey, Trump did his extreme vetting. Trump did everything he could, all within 1 week, right? And he said that if we, ban Muslims, we'd be in great shape. We better not get attacked, because if we get attacked, despite the fact that Trump got all the things that he wanted, right? Well, that's 100% on him.
Look, I think that his measures will not work. And I think what's likely to happen is at some point during his administration, God forbid, because this is not something that I would want, there will be homegrown terrorism. There will be a U.S. citizen who has been radicalized because, I don't know, there's something called the internet, right? And if that happens, what I'm worried is that we won't actually learn any lessons from banning refugees and banning people from Muslim-majority countries. We'll just go further in the wrong direction and then just start discriminating against Muslims here in the United States as a whole.
Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more in the postgame.
I have a lot of things I want to talk about in the postgame, okay?
All right, that's for the members. We'll do that later. tytnetwork.com/join. All right, what's up, man?
All right, I want to start off with some kind of non-Trump related news.
Everything comes back to Trump, right?
It does, unfortunately.
Yes.
Okay. Jordan Sheridan continues to do some serious reporting from DAPL, where Donald Trump has essentially allowed the corporations behind the pipeline to continue on with the construction. Now, there was a brief victory by those who had protested the construction of this pipeline. And of course, those protesters included progressives and also Native Americans who are very much concerned about their drinking water being contaminated. And they're also very much concerned about burial sites being destroyed as a result of this pipeline. Now, unfortunately, because Donald Trump has a vested interest in continuing the construction of this pipeline, it seems as though the corporations behind it are now just going ahead and doing what's necessary to do the drilling. Now, what Jordan found was that they have the equipment put in place to start drilling. We don't know for sure whether they've started drilling yet, but according to Emma, who does production for Jordan on the field, Jordan speaks with a drone pilot by the name of Myron Dewey as they fly over 2 DAPL drill pads, with a drone, by the way, on both the east and west sides of the Missouri River. The drill pads are about half a mile away from the river. Now, with that context, I want you to take a look at the footage that they have so you can kind of see the placement of the
and before we go to the footage, real quick, so if you were watching all along on youtube.com/tytpolitics, you saw earlier when they started, we'd gotten more drone footage, when they started bringing the equipment in and getting ready to drill, but they were not in drilling position yet.
Right.
So that's the update to the story. Now let's watch the video together.
That's the drill right there.
Right. And you could even see the pipe.
Yes, you can see the pipe is in the drill.
So that long black tube, it looks like, is the pipe, and there's other pipe on the side of it.
Yeah, so I'm going to go around, give everyone a 360 view of what we're seeing here.
And make sure you guys are sharing this. Let's get this around. Show you how close they are to completion of this pipeline.
So you can see the pipe is there. You got a lot of the input that we're getting is from previous workers who know what this equipment is, why it's placed where it's particularly at, and how they know that they're drilling. Get you a line of sight of the other pad is right there, straight across the river, and then we'll get another view of the camp, how far the camp is away from. There's the camp. That's the direction of the camp right there. Osheti, Sacred Stones, and Rosebud.
So if the pipe is already in the drill, that means it's already past the drill pad, meaning it's already underground, beyond the drill pad, close to the water.
If you go back on previous footage from digital smoke signals, you'll see that there is clearly all the way back when there was just dirt right here. And what do they have here? So we're gonna try to take another pass right here to let you see that, get a straight shot. It's directly in the pipe.
So they're in position now. One of the reasons why this is so relevant is that President Obama didn't say, hey, you can't drill. He said there needs to be an environmental impact statement. Now that has the force of law. And so by law, you must do that impact statement before you continue. So we see here that they have certainly gotten into position to drill. It's impossible to tell if there's anything going through those pipes at this point with the drone footage. But environmental impact statement, we don't think it's going to have much of an effect, and hence all the preparation to get ready to go.
Yeah, this is the most unsurprising story that we could possibly report, okay? If there was clear evidence that the drilling has absolutely taken place already, I still wouldn't be surprised. This is what you should expect under Trump's administration. Of course they're emboldened to go forward and do whatever they want without some environmental statement. Trump has made very clear that he doesn't give a shit about the environment. I mean, the first thing he did as soon as he got inaugurated was wipe the government website, whitehouse.gov, of anything related to climate change or our environment, and instead replaced it with, we need to do more drilling. So that's what's happening.
But by the way, just let's be clear about that, right? So if he got the environmental impact statement and said it would devastate the environment if you did this, and it would endanger the people that are near the drill and their drinking water, et cetera, and Trump said, that's like your opinion, man, and ignored it and continued to drill or authorized the drilling. And I say continue to drill, that's actually somewhat accurate. Trump is still heavily invested in this project and knows he is. It's an unbelievable conflict of interest, okay? So if he looked at the environmental impact statement and then ignored it, I think that would be within his rights as president. But it is not within his rights to circumvent the law, and once an environmental impact statement has been ordered, it must be completed. For him to say, nah, I don't care about the law, okay, he's doing it with the Muslim ban right now. There's 4 federal courts that have ordered him to release the detained people at the airports, and he says, that's your opinion, I don't care. I don't care what the courts say, I don't care about rule of law.
It's almost like he's in favor of lawlessness.
Almost.
Weird.
So that is why we're trying to shed a light here on what's going on. If they're ignoring the rule of law, and when it comes to an environmental impact statement, that is so obviously relevant. So this is the beginning of showing you the context of what's happening on the ground in North Dakota, and Jordan's back at Standing Rock, and we'll have more reports there as well at youtube.com/TYTpolitics.
All right, moving on to other news. Some are threatening a boycott of Starbucks after its CEO, Howard Schultz, decided to defend refugees worldwide by making a pledge to hire 10,000 refugees. Now, this doesn't mean that he's planning on hiring 10,000 refugees here in the United States. In fact, Starbucks operates in about 75 different countries. So he was clear, hey, you know what? We want to look out for these individuals and offer them jobs in several of our stores throughout several of these countries. In fact, he wrote a letter to his employees saying the following: "We are living in an unprecedented time, one in which we are witness to the conscience of our country and the promise of the American dream being called into question." So again, that was part of his pledge, and I think it's a pretty strong statement, especially at a time when politics has become so polarized and this is a very divisive issue. Now, some of the naysayers said that they're going to boycott Starbucks as a result of this pledge. Let me give you a few examples. One person writes, "Starbucks, why don't you hire the vets instead of refugees who might really ruin your business? Hashtag boycott Starbucks," which, by the way, that hashtag was trending on Twitter as a result of this story. And it turns out that Starbucks did make a pledge to hire vets. In fact, right now they're actually in the middle of a pledge to hire 10,000 vets. They've already hired about 8,000 of them.
Okay. So, hey, a right-winger who didn't bother to check the facts. That's got to be news. But to be fair to them, they were up all night trying to promote this hashtag. They went to Starbucks, got some coffee, so they could. Your boycotts are enormously useless. You won't affect Starbucks one drop.
Actually, based on stock prices, Starbucks is doing great today. So just putting that out there.
Hey, free market. You believe in the free market, right? Well, the market has spoken, and they apparently like Starbucks' plan and think you're a joke. Which is exactly what you are. So, look, to be fair, not a lot of boycotts work, period, liberal or conservative. But I've literally never seen, in over 20 years of covering politics, a conservative boycott work. Work meaning it has significantly impacted their bottom line and gotten them to reconsider, right? So now some of the boycotts of Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck did work.
Actually, interestingly enough, I had a meeting today, and it was in regard to radio, and what works, what doesn't work on radio. And Rush Limbaugh's comments on Sandra Fluke came up, and it was kind of amazing because this person who's an executive in radio was like, "Yeah, after he made that statement, it kind of destroyed radio." It did. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually affected more than Rush Limbaugh.
Yes, it did.
It even wound up affecting liberal radio to some degree, but. Boy, that's where advertisers cared. See, here's what the right-wingers don't understand. Advertisers need to sell to everyone. They don't want to alienate part of their customer base. Now, you think, oh, yeah, but you're alienating right-wingers, man. First of all, you and your Twitter buddies are like 7 dudes. So that's not a big percentage of their customer base.
7 dudes with several different Twitter accounts, and I love how they think that people are stupid. They can't figure that out.
Right.
Nonetheless.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, I've got eggs. You can't figure out that it's me. Anyway, secondly, no, when they say customer base, they're talking about, well, if we do something that offends Latinos or they're like 13, 14% of the country here in America, African Americans, 12% of the country, et cetera, well, that goes to their core identity. They're not going to be happy about that. Why would they want to do business with people who are attacking their core identity? Okay, but remember, these companies are international. So if you attack Muslims and there's 1.6 billion customers in the world who are Muslims, guess what you're going to lose? You're going to lose the capitalist companies that are trying to sell stuff to those 1.6 billion Muslims.
And by the way, I just find it so interesting that again, the same people that are like, "Oh yeah, deal with political correctness, man. I'm so tired of people getting offended." You get offended because a private business decides that they want to help out refugees. By the way, why do we mix up refugees with terrorists, right? These are people who are fleeing terrorism because their own family members are getting murdered and slaughtered, right? So they're trying to leave and flee to a safe place, okay? Most of these people are actually women and children as well.
The refugees that fled from the Nazis were not Nazis. They were the exact opposite.
I know, but we've dismantled education and critical thinking so effectively here in the United States that all of these dimwits don't understand nuance and can't differentiate between 2 different groups of people. But nonetheless, that's a completely different story.
Although very much related to this.
Very related, very related.
And by the way, I mean, sorry, to follow up, Anna, on what you're saying about how they're special snowflakes, there's the same Starbucks, they were so mad, wouldn't say Merry Christmas to them.
No. They lost it when Starbucks rolled out a green cup for like a week to symbolize unity. Think about that for a second. Oh my God, green cups, everyone. Unity. I'm so offended. Boycott. No, you guys are the special snowflakes.
First of all, green is in Starbucks color. Then in the holiday season, they had red and green because that's the holiday colors. But they said, no, you must write Merry Christmas on the cups. Howard Schultz, to the best of the internet's knowledge, is not Christian. Why does he have to write Merry Christmas on all of his cups? They don't understand the whole point of the country. They just don't get it.
It's almost like we're named the United States of America. But do not celebrate unity, okay? No unity.
You see, we could go back to real capitalism if we just stop with all the capitalism, okay? And, if we just banned all the Syrian immigrants in this country, we wouldn't have Apple. But still, you know what I'm saying. Of course, Steve Jobs' dad, a Muslim immigrant from Syria. Oops.
The post-game show today, I want to talk about, because I've been looking into the number of Syrian refugees that are of Armenian descent, okay? So in Aleppo alone, there were about 80,000 Armenians. And so, of course, Aleppo, a place of extreme violence because of the uprising and the, subsequent reaction by the Russians and Assad, like they need to get the fuck out of there too, right? So these are Armenians. These are Armenians that, by the way, a lot of our opponents claim that they care about. Like they're outraged by this show. They're outraged by the name of this show, right? They're outraged by a fucking column that was written 25 fucking years ago that someone sitting on the set right now retracted. They're outraged. But they're the same fucking people that do not give a shit about these Armenian refugees trying to find a safe haven because of the violence in Aleppo. I'm sure you care so much about Armenians. Or do you use the issue of Armenians and the genocide to push your hatred for Cenk? That's what it's really about. Anyway, let's take a fucking break because I'm about to lose my shit.
Okay. They had never even heard
Never gave a fuck about the genocide. Never. And by the way, I'm saying it here for the 50 millionth time, okay? I do not deny the genocide, talked about the genocide on this show. Go to our YouTube channel, search it. You'll find videos of me talking about the genocide. These people want to smear Cenk so badly that they hold on to that issue as if it's something that they genuinely care about. You don't care about what my family went through. You don't care about the Armenian genocide. Stop using it to push your nonsense political beliefs and your hatred, to be quite honest with you.
You see how we just banned her from saying that? Oh, right, we did.
I'm not allowed to talk about the Armenian genocide, guys.
We've got a curious way of showing it. All right, we'll be right back. All right, post-game here in Studio B. It's the green screen magic of internet television.
A lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with, marriage is an interesting thing, deserves a little bit of...
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do some, it's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is, you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, Ben, I got a great, achoo. You're like, my mouth was open, she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk.
Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna.
Yeah.
When we're off the air, I'm gonna be like, how is this gonna work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like at some point you're like, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's, and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. What do you mean why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see her.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship, and we don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Jackie McCaffrey writes in, they got this far under Obama, so not sure if they were emboldened by Trump. They got this far because of Democratic inaction. Okay, so you're talking about the drilling, I assume, in North Dakota. But to be fair, Obama did act at the end. It's a classic Obama move, I know. And I wish he'd taken action earlier. That's what we pushed him for. Okay, but Jackie, don't worry. JusticeDemocrats.com.
Yeah, by the way, where are the strong Democrats right now? You know that all of the contenders for the DNC were at a fundraiser over the weekend when this whole Muslim ban started? Mm-hmm. Just chilling, raising some funds, you know? Yeah,
so Nomi is doing some great work covering the DNC election.
Mm-hmm.
Check that out. We have some on youtube.com/TYT and some of it on youtube.com/TYTpolitics. And she made a great point about what the real divide is. It's not actually between progressives and the establishment, which is interesting because you'd think that's what it was about. It's actually between the state parties who actually want to win races at the local level, state level, et cetera. I mean, that's, and all the way up to the federal level, but through the states, right? And the consultants who want to run campaigns where they take 15% commission on all the ad dollars being spent. Mm-hmm. So if you build up your state organization and you've got staffers and volunteers there, they don't get paid off of that. So that might be effective, but who gives a shit about being effective? I got to get paid.
Yep.
So that's the real battle that's happening at the DNC. But look, don't worry about weak corporate Democrats. Let's go build a strong progressives. Look, you know that I started Just Democrats along with other people and some of Bernie's team. Here's what I really want to get to. I want to get to 1 million people who've signed up to be Justice Democrats. Already great progress. I had somebody text me today about somebody they said is running as a Justice Democrat. I'm like, whoa, wait. We haven't vetted the candidates yet. I don't know. But an idea is powerful and on fire when people are already claiming to be Justice Democrats and we haven't actually announced any candidates yet, right? So let's get to 1 million. I'm not talking about anything more than, if you want to donate, great. You want to nominate someone to run, awesome, we want that. You do all that through the website, justdemocrats.com. But just 10 seconds to sign up. So if we get 1 million people signed up, I think we're gonna shock the world. So I can't wait for that. Let's unleash strong progressives into the world. All right. Oh, sorry. Last two tweets not related to that. Shaun of the Dead says, well, I guarantee any money lost by Starbucks will be made up by all the extra coffee liberals will be buying. Resistance takes caffeine. That's a good point, Shaun. In fact, I'm going to talk to the folks here who get our coffee. One of my best friends works at Starbucks, and he's not going to like me saying this. But, a little on the coffee, that's it. We're switching to Starbucks. By switching to Starbucks, we will now have completely made up for the entire right-wing boycott.
Yeah, easily. Considering, we drink a lot of coffee here.
Yes. And finally, Tuesday writes in, as a Starbucks barista, I'm super excited by boycott's Starbucks movement. I can't wait for these loons to stop visiting my store.
Yeah. Do you remember when conservatives were so mad about the green cup symbolizing unity that they're like, oh yeah, we'll show you. We're going to show up to Starbucks and we're going to order your drinks, pay for them, and say our name is Trump. That way you have to write Trump on the cup. Okay.
And they're like, oh, whatevs. Grande or Vendi? What would you like? Right? What difference does it make? Okay.
Hilarious.
All right. Let's keep going.
Cal Penn decided to take a negative situation and turn it into a positive one. In fact, over the weekend, in response to Trump's ban of Muslim-majority countries, he posted on social media about his thoughts and how it personally affected him. He wrote, families are being torn apart. Shame on us. This is un-American. What Donald Trump and the Republican Party are doing is wholly un-American. Well, one person responded with hate, which typically does happen on social media. This person said, you don't belong in this country, you fucking joke. Which is interesting because he was actually born in New Jersey. So he does kind of belong in this country. So
all American citizens belong in the country. And what these white nationalists can't understand, and racists and bigots can't understand, is that being white doesn't make you any more American. I know that blows them away. Like, no, but we're white. Okay, but black people are just as American. I mean, blacks, they've been around a long time, maybe, right? Indian American, Muslim American is also 100% American.
Yeah.
Like, they literally don't understand that simple concept because, funny enough, they're un-American. So they don't view America as an idea and principles and a country led by this Constitution, which they haven't read. They just view it as a nationality, like me American because me white. Bah.
Yeah. You know, there are
That's
white.
not how it works.
There are white people in this country that don't have citizenship. I know it's like a weird concept for people to grasp, but that does happen. But nonetheless, Cal Penn didn't respond with hatred. In fact, he decided to create a fundraising effort in honor of this person and his hateful comment. So it's on CrowdRise, and it's a fundraiser specifically geared toward helping refugees. And it's incredible how much money this effort has already raised. Let's go to graphic 11. You'll see a screenshot of it. Now, the screenshot was taken earlier today, and the number just keeps increasing. So by the time you see this, I'm sure that they've already raised more money. But look at that, $639,425. And that was a fundraising effort that started on Saturday. Just in a few days, people came in and there was an outpouring of support. By the way, I love the title of that fundraiser. Let's take a look at it again. It's just fun. Donating to Syrian refugees in the name of the dude who said, "I don't belong in America." So taking lemons and making lemonade.
And I like that the original guy who started this, the troll, said, called him a joke. Well, he's a comedian, so I guess there's some sense in that.
Is he a comedian?
I mean, he's an actor, certainly, that's worked in comedies, so I think that's fair to say, Harold and Kumar. He also, by the way, worked at the White House.
He did, yeah, under the Obama administration. So I love this. I think it shows that, look, there are a lot of Americans that are on the right side. And, you know, you see it with the protests, you see it, you know, with all these people coming together and trying to fight. And look, the ACLU has been raising a ton of money as a result of their efforts. In fact, they raised $24 million this past weekend alone. Usually they raise about $4 million in any given year. So people are fired up. They want to take part in political action. They want to help those who are disenfranchised. And that's what kind of gives me hope for the future.
I mean, look, we raised $1.2 million to fund journalists to be watchdogs of this administration. And we're still going, tytnetwork.com/go. So everybody's got a different way of fighting back. And I think Cal chose a particularly clever way. So the next time you want to troll Cal Penn, you better think twice because he might raise $1 million just to spite you and give it to the people you don't like.
All right. Uber customers lashed out against the ride-sharing service over the weekend, especially in New York, where taxi cab drivers decided to strike for 1 hour to show solidarity with the Muslim community, and Uber decided to continue operating. Now, they continued operating even despite the fact that the strike was happening, but they did get rid of their surge pricing, which is automatically added whenever there's a big event and there are few drivers out on the road, okay? So it's automatically triggered. They decided to go ahead and get rid of the surge pricing so those who wanted to travel to the protests at JFK could continue to do so. But people were livid about that. So on Saturday, the New York City Taxi Workers Alliance called for a temporary halt, 1 hour long, 2 rides heading to JFK Airport. The Alliance, which is not a union but a cab driver advocacy group, sought to rally drivers in support. Now, the company, and that's Uber, announced shortly after 7:30 p.m., when the strike was over, that it would temporarily suspend surge pricing in recognition that demand would be unusually high. But people were livid about it anyway. They're like, look, you guys should have striked along with these cab drivers to show solidarity. How dare you do this? But I don't know. I'm kind of on the other side of the argument. So I'm really curious to hear, you know, where you stand, and then I'll give you my reasoning.
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought we all had to agree here and do lib orthodoxy.
Yeah. Totally.
So let me go with the party line. No. So first off, Uber gets in trouble every time there's surge pricing. Part of the reason they do surge pricing is because it motivates other Uber drivers to get on the road to meet the demand. The other reason is to make money. So let's just be clear about that. In this case, they seem to have acted quickly to get rid of surge pricing given the extraordinary circumstances, which, by the way, means there'll be less people that can take Ubers to the airport. But, hey, I agree with that sentiment, okay? Should they have done a strike? Well, that's a very tough thing to determine on the spot for a company and make that decision for all their drivers as well. Like, hey, the drivers, you're not allowed to go to the airport. I don't even know if they could really implement that. I suppose they could with programming, but that's a hell of a decision to make on the spot.
Yeah, it is. It is. And look, I think that there are strong arguments against the strike. And I get that there is value in solidarity, and I agree with you. I think that there's something great about that. However, speaking from experience, there are people who need a way to get to JFK if they want to be part of these protests. And so I speak from experience because when we wanted to be part of the Women's March, we thought, okay, we're definitely not driving there because it's going to be a nightmare. So why don't we take public transportation? So we were going to take the Red Line here in Los Angeles. It'll take you straight to, City Hall and where the protests were supposed to take place. But it was a nightmare. It was completely backed up. You couldn't even get to the platform to get on a train. And so then we decided, all right, we'll take a Lyft or an Uber, whatever we can do. Uber was so jam-packed that we couldn't get a ride for about an hour. And then Lyft was the only ride-sharing service that was really available at the time. And they surged the price. Again, it's automatic, I get that. But they surged the price 700%. So it would have cost $100 to travel from Hollywood, where we were, to downtown. It's like not even that far.
So, look, part of the point from that is that in the airport ban, Lyft is considered the good guys because they jumped in and offered to donate $1 million to the ACLU.
Right.
But when they do the surge pricing on the Women's March in LA, it's not because they hate women. It's just that that's what the market is calling for.
That's the market, and that is how their business model is set up. And I understand a lot of the drivers have to go through quite a bit to go back and forth to get protesters to where they want to go. But what I'm trying to say is, look, I was lucky because I live in Los Angeles where you're forced to drive everywhere. So I had the option of driving my own car to the protest. And being part of that protest was important to me. For many people going to JFK over the weekend, being part of that protest against Donald Trump's Muslim ban, essentially, was important to them. So having that ride-sharing option, I think, is valuable for some people. I don't know. Again, speaking from my personal experience, I understand the people who are angry, but try to see the other perspective as well.
So they did hashtag delete Uber, et cetera. I know, I'm with you, Anna. So let's just look at it this way. If you say, hey, credit to the New York City Taxi Workers Alliance, I agree with you. I think it's a great statement to make. And, whether it blocks people from getting to the airport or even getting to the protest, it's still a nice symbolic move that makes us feel like we're in solidarity with one another. But if everybody stops going to the airport, then you can't get to the protest either. Right?
Exactly.
And so I think that you can applaud the people taking action without hating the people that are not taking action or that are not taking the exact action that you wanted. So I'm not, look, and let's get real. One of the reasons why Uber is getting targeted is because of context. And the context is their CEO is one of Trump's economic advisors.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that the criticism regarding these Silicon Valley CEOs working as Trump advisors is worthy criticism. I have no problem with that. I hate the argument that some of these CEOs are making where they're like, yeah, but if we're one of his advisors, maybe we can sway him in the right direction. No, he won't even take the advice of his own nominees. He doesn't care what they have to say. He plays by his own rules. He doesn't even care what federal judges have to say. So you're not going to sway Trump in one way or another. I think that it's a little more effective if you openly speak out against his policies, which, by the way, the CEO of Uber did do.
In this particular
case.
And then he some vague comment about putting aside $3 million for something or other.
Let me give you the details of that. So Uber is pledging $3 million to help pay for the legal defense of any Uber driver who has been affected by these anti-Muslim policies.
Okay, they're putting that money aside.
Yes.
All right, let's see how that goes. But look, I'm not saying that we're defending Uber largely in this case. So I'm giving you the context of it, and the Uber CEO is against the ban in this particular case. But I'm with Anna that you're not affecting Trump by being on the inside. Instead, what you're doing is you're legitimizing him, and he gets to say, you see, all these savvy businessmen agree with me. So when I do things like the Muslim ban, you might not agree, CEO of Uber, but since you're one of my advisors, I get to take credit and say, look at all these legitimate people who empower me to do what I'm doing. So don't empower them. Having said that, in this case, I don't think Uber is guilty for driving people to the airport and to the protests.
Yep. All right. Among many who are associated with Trump, Ivanka Trump also faced a little bit of criticism over the weekend following his ban of Muslim-majority countries. Now, Ivanka Trump did tweet something that seemed a little tone-deaf. While these protests were taking place in various airports throughout the country as a result of people traveling from Muslim countries and being detained as a result, she just tweeted this photo of herself and Jared Kushner dressed all nice, about to go to a gala. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of shows you the two different bubbles that people are living in right now. One is a very wealthy, out-of-touch bubble. The other is one that has to face some of the realistic consequences of Trump's administration.
Wait, Anna, I thought that they were against elites. They wanted to drain the swamp and the global financial elites that were causing all of our troubles. I mean, I'm surprised. They're going to galas?
No, you guys don't get it, though. Rural white Americans have been ignored. And so we need to make sure that we elect the worst possible candidate to represent them, who is not only out of touch when it comes to their problems, but also insanely wealthy and has so many conflicts of interest that he will use his presidency and his power to make as much money as possible while screwing over the same people who voted for him. But nonetheless, I'm an elitist because I'm sharing my opinion that's fact-based. Let me go ahead and pretend like all of those concerns of rural white Americans are completely listened to by people like Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump.
To be fair, the best place to listen to the concerns of rural white Americans is at galas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, she's wearing this dress. The issue isn't just that they're dressed up and they're about to go to a gala as people are suffering under Trump's administration. It's everything that it symbolizes. The dress that she was wearing is worth $5,000. It's a Carolina Herrera dress.
Ooh.
And it's amazing how expensive these ugly dresses are. But nonetheless, the hashtag...
I didn't know tinfoil cost that much.
Yeah, look, it's not an ugly dress. Like, let me be fair. I just feel like you could find that dress at Marshall's for like $25. Just keep it at 100.
Not how the Trumps roll.
Right. So the hashtag Let Them Eat Cake popped up on social media as people compared Ivanka Trump and by association the entire Trump family to Marie Antoinette. So there were a few interesting comparisons of her dress and, you know, the plight of some of these refugees. Let's take a look at one example. Okay, so someone tweeted who wore it better, and you know, you see a poor kid who has to deal with a horrendous situation on one side, and then you have Ivanka Trump on the other. I mean,
it's powerful.
It is powerful. Next picture is graphic, but a lot of you have seen it already. So
that's the young boy that was pulled out of the rubble in Syria that caught the attention of so many people across the world. And obviously had that stunned look on his face. You know, he was okay at that moment. We actually don't know what's happened to him since, because obviously over 300,000 people have died in Syria. And look, to wear this dress on any given weekend, is it the world's biggest crime? Of course not. And I'm not trying to blow it out of proportion. I think it's okay, though, for people to ask, hey, just be aware of your context. These folks are now very, very powerful. So Ivanka is apparently going to the White House. Jared Kushner is now in charge of our Israel policy, I think. They're one of the top advisors to Donald Trump. He listens to them almost as much as anyone there is. So I'm not even saying cancel your gala. I get it. You're a Trump. You must attend galas, right? And be a multi-billionaire or alleged multi-billionaire claiming to care about, who, by the way, takes great pride in having previously bribed politicians. Remember when Trump would say on the debate stage, I bought all these politicians before. that means you were the corrupter. That's not really a good thing. Anyway, but have the decency to maybe not tweet out the picture of you in the $5,000 dress, as at the same time, at one particular story we covered on today's show, a 5-year-old boy coming in from Iran was detained because he's Iranian and he's Muslim. And boy, that's really dangerous. So while that poor kid is surrounded by cops and in a room without anybody else worrying about his fate, don't tweet out pictures about what a grand time you're going to have. Just maybe wait a couple of weeks. Although, I don't know when your dad stops doing monstrous things. So maybe we stop the tweeting about your dresses while you're in power.
Look, I think the tweeting, I like the transparency. And I think that the tweeting is important. And I don't know if she tweeted this or Instagrammed it, whatever. It's floating around the internet. I think that what I want to happen more than anything is for Americans to wake up and stop being conned. You are being conned, okay? You were frustrated with the establishment politicians. I hear you. So was I. But you went for you basically cut out the middleman, which is the establishment politicians, and went straight for the corporation. We have now voted a corporation into office, right? And so we don't have to worry about government corruption because the corruption is already there, you know? And so here's a woman who doesn't... You think they care about that Syrian kid that was pulled out of the rubble? They don't see people like that as humans, right? The people who want to ban the refugees don't see children like that as children. They don't see them as the equivalent of white children born in here in the United States.
And certainly not their children.
Right?
And now you can say, hey, no, that's not fair. Ivanka's a little bit more moderate. No. She fully supported and is part of an administration where the president is saying, A, if you're Muslim, you go to the back of the line. If you're Christian, you go to the front of the line. If you're a 5-year-old kid, you're coming into this country, you're guilty because of the religion that you were born into, and you're potentially dangerous, as the press secretary said today. And by the way, I also think that we should kill the family members of, he claimed, people he thinks are terrorists. And he is supporting Russia as they obliterate Aleppo and all those families and kids, et cetera, die. So you don't get to pretend that you're moderate when you're part of this administration and the horrific things that they support in terms of foreign, now domestic policy as well. So yes, we get to criticize you for that and rain on your maybe literal parade this weekend when you were looking to have such a brilliant time at this soiree that you were going to.
Yeah. All right, finally, the SAG Awards last night. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the people who openly spoke out against what's happening in government today. The 2017 SAG Awards happened over the weekend, and many of the acceptance speeches turned out to be very political, and there were a lot of very strong statements made against Donald Trump's travel ban of Muslim-majority countries. Now, the awards opened with, "You are a part of the fabric of who we are, and we love you, and we welcome you." Something that I didn't know, actually, is that Mila Kunis, who's with Ashton Kutcher, that's his wife, was a refugee due to the Cold War. Yeah, I had no idea. So this is an issue that he feels very strongly about, and he, you know, made some very strong media as well.
And whereas these refugees are just running from ISIS.
Good point. Good point. So then we had David Harbour, who is one of the actors on Stranger Things, a Netflix series, which you should check out if you haven't already. It's awesome. And he said during his acceptance speech, "We will get past the lies, we will hunt monsters, and when we are lost amid the hypocrisy and casual violence, we will punch some people in the face when they seek to destroy the weak and the disenfranchised and the marginalized."
So that was my favorite speech. And one, he was super energized. We can't legally show you guys the speeches, but you should check it out. He was amped up, and he got the crowd all amped up on fighting for freedom, basically, in the American way. But that wasn't the best part of the speech. The best part was Winona Ryder's reactions. Throughout, she was like, there's something at least a little off with Winona Ryder. She is a strange, strange bird.
That's why she's perfect for Stranger Things.
Yes, she was,
Yes.
no question.
Yes. Julia Louis-Dreyfus also made some really, really great comments during her speech. She said, "My father fled religious persecution in Nazi-occupied France. I'm an American patriot, and I love this country. And because I love this country, I am horrified by its blemishes. And this immigrant ban is a blemish, and it is un-American."
God bless her. I love it.
Yep.
Some of the strongest fighters in America in favor of Muslims are Jewish Americans. And Jewish community leaders organized a protest immediately as soon as the Muslim ban started in New York. And so this is the best of America, when we stick together and we rally for one another, as Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are doing, as Julia Louis-Dreyfus is doing. And by the way, it's one thing when a Muslim does it, and it shouldn't be devalued at all, right, when they fight for themselves. But it gives them much more strength when others help them in that fight.
Right.
So that they can't easily be dismissed as, oh, you're self-interested. Of course, you don't want your family members banned just because you're, what, like everybody else, and you're an American and you want equal rights. That's not a thing that you can say you have self-interest in. I mean, yeah, we all have an interest in having all of our rights, but unfortunately, that kind of demagoguery sometimes does work. So when others step up and go, no, we're all in this together and we're all going to fight together, it makes a huge difference.
It does, absolutely. And I just want to note that, you know, when Nazis were persecuting Jewish individuals, public opinion here in the United States indicated that accepting them into the country as refugees was not a good thing. A lot of Americans did not want that to happen. So we've been on the wrong side of history when it comes to issues like this. Doesn't matter if it's Jewish individuals or Muslims. There are always going to be people in this country who are against those who are suffering in other countries. They do not want to allow them in.
Well, it famously happened with a ship that landed on the coast of Florida, went up the eastern coast trying to find anyone who would take them in, and they were refugees that were fleeing Nazi-occupied Europe, and we didn't. We said we're going to not allow them in until we figure out what's going on, and we sent them back. And by the way, at least a quarter of them were murdered by the Nazis. So there's a history of this, and that is not a history we should want to repeat. When people are coming to us and they've been vetted and we know who they are, and we have the toughest vetting process in the world here in America, and they want to run towards freedom, we should take them with open arms, because that's who we are.
All right.
Okay. Boy, I told you it'd be a long show. I wasn't kidding. We always deliver. All right, on the post game, a little bit more politics, and then you want to go off a little bit more?
Yeah, I want to go off.
All right, Anna goes off. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member and get the post game. Bye-bye.